She once sold fruit on the streets to survive.
Natalia Vodianova is one of the world's greatest supermodels.
Today, Natalia Vodianova has walked the world's biggest runways. But that's not the whole story. Stick around because her rise from hardship turned into something bigger, building change far beyond fashion. Before the runways, the flashing lights, or the designer gowns, there was just a girl in a small Russian town, standing in the freezing cold, selling fruit to help feed her family. Natalia Vodianova's story doesn't begin in fashion. It begins in raw survival. Born in 1982 in Gorky, now called Nizhny Novgorod, her childhood wasn't just modest, it was unforgiving. Soviet-era housing blocks, worn-down shoes, and a daily grind that most of us couldn't even imagine. Her mom raised 3 daughters on her own, one of whom, Oksana, has cerebral palsy. And here's what really sets this apart. Natalia wasn't just dealing with poverty. She was a kid carrying a household on her back. She skipped school to help her mother sell fruit on the streets, not as a side hustle, but as a lifeline. That was her reality. Most people would break under that weight. But Natalia, she didn't just carry it, she turned it into fuel. And that's something you'll see again and again in her story. This almost surreal ability to endure, absorb, and transform pain. And here's a moment that rarely gets talked about. When she was 11, she was hit by a car. Badly. Her leg was so injured she couldn't walk properly for nearly a year. But what did she do? Kept selling. Kept showing up. Kept going. By her teenage years, she was already operating on instinct. Survival mode wasn't a phase, it was her normal. But even then, she was dreaming bigger. Not of fame, not even of fashion, really. Just of something more. A way out. A better life. Not just for her, but for her family. So when a modeling scout came through town and saw her, yes, the big discovery story we've all heard, she wasn't just a pretty face with great bone structure. She was a fighter. A girl who'd already lived a dozen lifetimes by 15. And that's where it all really started. Not with luck, with grit. When Natalia Vodianova finally stepped onto a plane to Paris at just 17, she wasn't chasing stardom, she was chasing stability. She barely spoke any English, had never been outside of Russia, and had nothing but a small suitcase and this wild sense that maybe her life was about to change. Spoiler, it did. Fast. By 18, she was walking for Gucci. By 20, she was starring in campaigns for Calvin Klein. And not just in them, she became the face of them. But here's what made her different. She never got swept up in the chaos. Models around her were partying in Ibiza, getting tabloid deals, or burning out entirely. Natalia? She was wiring money home, learning English on the fly, and keeping her sister's medical needs at the center of everything she did. Within just a few years, she was everywhere. Vogue, Harper's, runway after runway. She had this mix of elegance and vulnerability that fashion hadn't really seen before. Like, yeah, she was stunning, but there was also something human in her expression. Something you could feel but couldn't quite name. That's why she stuck. Not just another beauty. She had a story. And even if you didn't know it, you felt it. And then came the real moment. Calvin Klein's Euphoria campaign. That thing wasn't just a gig. It was a global turning point. Suddenly, she wasn't just modeling clothes. She was selling emotion, luxury, escapism. But you know what she was doing backstage? Calling her mom, checking in on Oksana, reading medical papers about cerebral palsy. Even at the height of her fame, she was still doing homework, just a different kind. People often ask how someone stays grounded while the world's calling them a goddess. In Natalia's case, the answer's simple. She never thought of herself as one. She once said, "Fame doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you are." And Natalia? She was a caregiver before she was ever a cover girl. Here's the thing people always get wrong about Natalia Vodianova. They think she used modeling to escape her past. But what she really did? She used it to rewrite it. For herself, her sister, and thousands of other kids who'd never had a chance. Because while the fashion world was handing her million-dollar contracts, Natalia was already thinking way beyond runways. In 2004, while still one of the highest-paid models in the world, Forbes listed, campaigns everywhere, she launched something totally unexpected, the Naked Heart Foundation. And this wasn't just a vanity charity. This was personal. The goal? To build safe, inclusive playgrounds across Russia. Why? Because she remembered what it was like to grow up in a place where there was nothing for children, no space to play, no access for kids like Oksana. Just cold concrete and daily survival. Her first playground opened in Nizhny Novgorod. Full circle, right? The same streets where she used to sell fruit, now filled with color, laughter, and access. It was a promise kept, and it didn't stop at one. As of today, the foundation's built over 150 playgrounds across Russia and beyond. Not sponsored, not symbolic. Real places. Real impact. And she's not just cutting ribbons. Natalia's out there, meeting families, fighting bureaucracy, lobbying for disability rights in countries where the conversation barely exists. She's been to the UN, spoken at major global summits, not because she's famous, but because she knows what she's talking about. She once said, "I grew up ashamed of my sister's condition because no one ever taught me to see her as equal." That line, it breaks you. And it explains everything. Her mission isn't just about helping. It's about changing perception, making sure no kid grows up feeling like they don't belong, like they're invisible. So yeah, she's worn couture in Paris, but she's also knee-deep in public policy and disability advocacy. Because for Natalia, success was never the finish line. It was the launch pad. From the outside, Natalia Vodianova's life looked like a dream: high fashion, luxury homes, A-list events. But behind that flawless smile, there was a real, raw, human struggle most people never saw, until she started talking about it. In a world obsessed with perfection, Natalia did something almost unthinkable. She admitted that she wasn't always okay. She opened up about anxiety, about body image, about the emotional pressure of being the perfect woman in front of a camera, while juggling life as a single mom and a full-time humanitarian behind the scenes. Think about it. When your literal job is to be beautiful, aging becomes a mental war. And Natalia didn't sugarcoat it. She said she struggled to accept her body after pregnancy, that she's felt like an outsider in fashion circles, that sometimes she felt like she had to earn her space in rooms she was already dominating. But here's what makes it powerful. She didn't share it for sympathy. She shared it because no one else would. And it mattered. It made space. For young models, for women under pressure, for anyone trying to hold it all together while pretending they're fine. And let's not forget, this was years before mental health became a buzzword. She was speaking about this stuff when it was still taboo. In fashion, in Russia, in media. She's also been refreshingly honest about growing up with shame. Shame around her family's poverty, around her sister's disability, around her own worth. That kind of thing doesn't disappear with fame. It lingers. And Natalia didn't run from it. She faced it head-on. Therapy, activism, storytelling. It all became part of her healing. And you know what's wild? The more honest she became, the more power she seemed to hold. She stopped trying to control the narrative. And that became the narrative. A woman who made peace with herself. So yeah, she's a supermodel. But what makes her unforgettable isn't the face. It's the courage to admit what it took to hold it all together. And sometimes, what it took to let it fall apart. For someone who lived so much of her life in front of the camera, Natalia Vodianova kept her most important stories behind closed doors. And that, honestly, is part of what made her so powerful. While the media chased scandals and fashion weeks, she was quietly building something far more meaningful: a family, a purpose, and a life outside the spotlight. Her first marriage was to British aristocrat Justin Portman. They met in the early 2000s, fell fast, and had 3 children together. On paper, it looked like a fairy tale: supermodel meets nobility, art and glamour blending into one. But the reality? Much messier. Behind the elegance, their relationship was crumbling. Natalia later described it as a life that looked beautiful from the outside, but felt empty on the inside. They quietly split in 2011. And here's where it gets real. Instead of spiraling or selling the story to tabloids, she simply kept going. She focused on her kids, on her foundation, on rebuilding. Then came a second chance at love with Antoine Arnault, the son of LVMH chairman Bernard Arnault. A man not only deeply rooted in fashion but also in family values. They had 2 sons together, blending into a family of 7. In 2020, they got married in a small, intimate ceremony in Paris. No big press push, no spectacle, just love, simplicity, and commitment, on her own terms. But through all of it, motherhood was the anchor. Natalia has said more than once that her children saved her, that they grounded her in a way the industry never could. She calls them her why, her reason to heal, to grow, to do better. And it shows. She's kept her kids out of the media, even while she's still working major fashion campaigns. She's shown up to meetings at the UN one week, then soccer practice the next. There's no act, just a woman trying to do right by her past, while giving her children a wildly different future. In the end, her greatest achievement isn't the catwalk. It's the calm she built when no one was watching. Here's something you don't always hear in Western interviews. Natalia Vodianova has never really let go of Russia. Not emotionally, not culturally, not spiritually. Even after 2 decades living abroad, raising her family in Paris, walking runways from Milan to Manhattan, she still calls herself a Russian woman. And that's complicated. See, Natalia doesn't just represent Russia on the global stage. She's constantly balancing it. The expectations, the pride, the politics. For years, she was praised back home as this hometown hero, the Cinderella from Nizhny Novgorod, who made it big, but never forgot where she came from. Her foundation built parks across the country. She hosted fundraising galas in Moscow. She even carried the Olympic torch in Sochi. She was everywhere. But fame comes with scrutiny. And in Russia, that line between national pride and public criticism gets thin. When she began using her platform to speak out about inclusion, disability rights, and gender equality, not everyone celebrated it. Some thought she was too Western, too bold, too open. And during moments of national controversy, people wanted her to pick a side, loudly. But Natalia, she didn't take the bait. Instead, she walked that impossibly thin tightrope, refusing to abandon her roots, while refusing to be boxed in by them. She said before, "Russia is in my heart, but I live in the world," and that tension between where you come from and who you've become is something millions of people can relate to, especially immigrants, expats, third culture kids. And yet, she's still doing the work, still showing up, still building playgrounds in towns most billionaires couldn't find on a map. She's become this strange, beautiful contradiction, both global icon and small-town girl. Proudly Russian, but fearlessly independent. It's not an easy role. Being a symbol never is. But Natalia carries it the same way she's carried everything else in her life, with grace, grit, and an open heart that refuses to be simplified. Most celebrities will post a hashtag, maybe do a charity event, maybe donate and move on. Natalia Vodianova, she went straight for the root. Her activism around disability inclusion didn't just come from a place of compassion, it came from living it. Growing up with her sister Oksana, who has autism and cerebral palsy, Natalia saw firsthand what it meant to be excluded. Not just by strangers, but by the system itself. In Soviet-era Russia, kids with disabilities weren't given support. They were often sent to institutions, isolated, hidden. There was no inclusion, no resources, no public empathy. It was silence. And Natalia never forgot that silence. So when she created the Naked Heart Foundation, she didn't just build playgrounds, she built programs, education, sensory spaces, partnerships with international disability organizations. She brought in researchers, therapists, and policymakers. Because she knew one thing: changing minds wasn't enough. You had to change laws. In 2015, her foundation co-launched the Every Child Deserves a Family campaign in Russia, challenging outdated legislation that denied children with disabilities the right to grow up in families. Let that sink in. Up until recently, Russia still placed thousands of kids with disabilities in state-run orphanages because they were seen as unfit for normal family life. Natalia went straight into that battle, not quietly, not gently. She sat at the table with lawmakers, pushed for reform, brought in data. She even took on criticism from conservative circles who thought she was too idealistic, or worse, meddling in policy that wasn't her place. But she kept going, because she knew it was her place, and it wasn't just Russia. Natalia helped launch the Speak Up Forum for Global Inclusion. She's worked with the UN, UNESCO, and Special Olympics. She's used her brand partnerships, yes, even with Louis Vuitton and Guerlain, to push for awareness around accessible design and inclusive hiring. This isn't just side work for her. This is the work. And it's personal. She once said, "My sister taught me everything I know about love, resilience, and justice." That's not a slogan. That's the mission. You know, the word model used to be pretty straightforward, right? You wore the clothes. You walked the walk. Maybe smiled, maybe smoldered. That was it. You were a hanger with a perfect jawline. But Natalia Vodianova showed up and changed the rules, without ever declaring she was trying to. While the industry was focused on selling perfection, she was quietly selling substance. Yes, she was in every major magazine. Yes, she had the cheekbones that stopped traffic. But look a little closer, and she was always doing something more. She brought storytelling into campaigns before it was trendy. There was emotion in her ads, narrative in her eyes. She wasn't just modeling fashion, she was embodying an entire energy. And she wasn't obsessed with fame. That alone made her an anomaly. While others were building fashion lines or fragrance empires, Natalia was showing up at UNICEF meetings. While red carpets were full of posturing, she was walking them with her kids, in flats. And she did it without acting like she was above the industry. She respected fashion, but she never let it own her. Designers loved her not just for her look, but for her reliability. There's a famous story where she once flew from Paris to New York overnight, did a show, and flew right back, just to make it to her kids' school event. No drama, no entourage, just priorities. And then came the shift. As she got older, Natalia didn't fade. She didn't panic. She kept getting campaigns, walked the runway pregnant twice, shot major editorials in her 30s, 40s, and now her 40s plus. That kind of longevity? Almost unheard of. She didn't change to fit the industry. She made the industry grow up with her. She made space for working mothers, for quiet power, for softness without weakness. And whether you noticed or not, that changed everything. So when we talk about supermodels, we usually mean beauty, fame, covers. But Natalia Vodianova, she reminded the world that modeling isn't just about how you wear something, it's about what you stand for while wearing it. Natalia Vodianova didn't just walk the runway, she walked through fire, carried her past with her, and built something no spotlight could ever reflect. Her story's not about fame. It's about what you do with it once you have it. If this moved you even a little, hit that like button. It helps more people hear stories that actually matter. And if you want more stories like this, real ones, the kind that stay with you, go ahead and subscribe. We've got more coming.